Hello, everybody. Welcome to the program. Today is Saturday, 7th March 2026. We are gathered here today for the 222nd session of Mindfulness for Beginners in English, conducted by Nissarana Vanaya. I would like to welcome Bhante Homagama DhammaKusala Thero to this session. And our program, and of course, everyone else who's joining live via Zoom and anyone else who may be watching via our live stream session in YouTube. I'd like to outline the program today. We'd start off with in-session practice of mindfulness. This will be followed by the talk on today's topic, which is the beautiful lie. I think I made a mistake previously on this topic, so apologies for that. And then we will be moving on to any reports we have received today. And finally, we will, if we have time, we will move on to questions. Now, to begin today's session, I now invite Bhante DhammaKusala Thero to start the in-session practice of mindfulness.
Thanks, Sonali. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. Okay, everyone. So we'll get started with the sitting session. For this, feel free to turn on video and join for the sitting session. Make sure that you are seated in a balanced and comfortable manner. Then you can gently close your eyes. You are seated and you have your eyes closed. Notice what you feel in the moment. We might hear surrounding sounds. We feel certain bodily sensations. Sometimes thoughts, memories, they come and go. So this is our observation when we do the usual mindfulness practice. But today I would encourage you to focus on the observer. Not the observation in the usual sense. Instead, simply focus on the observer. Who is observing? Who is witnessing the moment? Let's continue for a few minutes and let's see whether we can catch the observer instead of the observation. Okay, everyone. Now you can open your eyes again. So today we did our practice with a different approach. Usually we focus on the observation, but today we tried to turn our attention towards the observer. And when you try this, you might have different experiences. So let's take few minutes to share our experience on the practice. And you can simply share what you felt during those few minutes and whether you were successful trying to catch the observer. So feel free to use the Zoom hand and let's see what you have to say.
Avassarai Bhante. I must say that was the first time I've done this meditation, and
I'm not sure whether it's
okay.
your voice is very faint. Bit louder.
Can you hear now?
Yeah.
Or let me. Is it better?
We can hear now.
Or I could put. Can you hear, Sonali? Let me just
Yes,
try
we can
putting
hear
my
now.
head. Headphones on even. Don't know. Is that any better?
It's fine now, Samantha.
Okay, yeah. I've just Bhante, I was just thinking, I've never done this obviously before. It was strange. I found it difficult to see who's observing. I find myself listening to my inner chatter more, a voice inside, and then I was just sort of like thinking, oh, there is like just a consciousness there, but it was just me talking to myself. That's what I experienced, Bhante.
Okay, yes. So that's a good observation. When you try to see who is watching, simply you are directed towards your own chatter, your own thinking. That way, sometimes we are directed towards those things. Yes. We'll see. We go into the talk today and see how to figure out this more. Yes, Chaya.
Avassarai Bhante. Rather than an experience, I actually have a question for you. The task of observing the observer, I was wondering whether to kind of translate it into Buddhist terms, whether you are asking us to identify, like we talk about name and form, whether you were asking us to identify the name rather than the form. Is that what the task was about? So I just wanted to ask you that. If it's a unnecessary question to ask at this point, I understand that also, Bhante. So yeah, thank you very much.
Yes, so that point we can discuss in the upcoming talk, which is related to today's topic. But if you want to add your own experience doing that, and then you are welcome to do that as well. Anyone else? Sonali, can you see anyone?
No, Bhante, I can't really see anyone else. Mihiri, sorry. Mihiri? Oh, what happened? Can't see Mihiri anymore.
You're disconnected, is it?
I think she suddenly got disconnected. Yeah, Bhante, I also felt very similar experience to Samantha, actually. I just started going, who is observing, and then suddenly went into myself and started observing the bodily functions and things, rather than, so yeah, it was very similar.
Yes. So usually we are misdirected towards various other things. We try to do this. It's a good technique. Some people, they end up with a headache trying to see who is really observing. It's like you are directed towards a dead end. And if you try too much, then you feel too heavy in your head, right? So these things are natural in this approach. Anyone else who would like to? We have like couple more minutes if you are willing to share your own experience.
Mihiri has been connected back again. We'll see if you can unmute now.
Avasara Bante. Yeah, it was an interesting experience. Couldn't really pick anything apart from just being aware of what was going on. Couldn't really identify and observe as such. Just felt a kind of a knowing, if you like, or just noting what was going on. That was it. And towards the end of it, noted there was a little bit of thought proliferation, but quite short. But that was it.
Yes. So that is natural. What happened? Because usually you are directed towards various thoughts, certain bodily sensations and things like that. Yes, we can discuss this further. I just wanted to give you a feeling of trying this. Yes, Bandula.
Avasara Bante, it's a bit hard one. So what I'm trying to do, I heard a few things surrounding. Actually, I heard a sound. So instead of listening, trying to watch the listener. Then it's all of a sudden it's disappear, and then it goes to something else. Say like it's moved to another sound, surrounding sound, and try to listening. So I just, instead of the sound, I see why I go to that sound. So the listener. So it's a bit of confusion there. So few things it goes one by one. And one occasion it came to the breath and didn't last that long. That's all, one thing.
Yes. Confusion is natural. In a way, confusion is insightful when it comes to these type of topics. You know that you are missing something. You know that you haven't seen it properly. So that's insightful in a way. You are confused, right?
Yes.
So confusion, we can take it as a good sign, positive sign. Yes. I think that's it about the activity. And today we tried a different approach than our usual practice. Usually we are all focused on the experience, but today we tried to turn our attention towards the experiencer instead of the observation who is observing this. And you had certain interesting feedback based on that practice. And with that, we can conclude the activity. I'm actually concluding with a question mark. And I don't think even in the talk I can conclude this with an answer. Instead, even in the talk, it will be a question mark. Yes, with that, Sonali, you can take over.
Thank you, Bante. That was very intriguing, and we are all full of questions now. I think that was the purpose of it, and you have achieved it very well. So, with that, now we will move on to the talk on today's topic, which is named. The poster says it's the beautiful lie. So, I'm hoping we will find some answers as to what the first exercise was in this talk. I now invite Bhante again to start the talk on today's topic.
Hello everyone. So we are starting a fresh topic today. And this one is a broad topic, but let's try to approach in this manner. Now, when you think about the outside world, where does the I end and the world begins? We usually feel that we are a separate entity from the outside world, and we try to establish this is me and this is the outside world. Right? So if you really think about it, where does this I end and the world begins? Some of you might say it's the outer surface of your skin. That's what separates it. You know, within the skin, you have the I, and beyond the skin, it's the outside world. Right? And some of you might say it's where the breath becomes air. Right? Probably around this point. The breath becomes air. Right? So that's the margin. And some of you might say, although I am here, I could hear many things from far away, and maybe the furthest I can hear, that would be the end of my world, something like that. Right? And even going further, you might say I can see the world. The furthest point I can see, that creates my world. Something like that, right? So it's a tricky question. It feels like we know the margin, we know the boundary, but this margin, this boundary is not so accurate. It's like more like an illusion. Because without you, how can you establish an outside world? Without you experiencing the sounds, how do you know that there are sounds in the outside world? Without you experiencing the sights, how do you know that there are things in the outside world? So it's an illusion in a way to establish the exact boundary between you and the world. Where does the I end and the world begins? Right? Without this I, can we establish an outside world? That's the question. Right? That's a tricky one. So this topic, it talks about world in a sense. It says that the world wants to be deceived. So let it be deceived. That's the topic selected for the week. And the world wants to be deceived. So let it be deceived. That's the idea there. So what is this world? That's the question that we have to discuss. It feels like we are talking about outside. It feels like we are talking about other people. It feels like we are talking about the media or the things like that. Of course, we can approach it in this manner, that it is the outside world, it is the other people, it is the things. But when we think about the practice, according to Buddhist approach, Buddha established the world within our senses only. You can't establish a world without your senses. So only within these sense doors, the world is established. Right? So it's good to take that approach instead of the usual worldly approach. the worldly approach to the world. We are thinking about outside. We are thinking about all the wars that are happening. We are thinking about other countries, other people. But all those thoughts, all those sounds, all those observations came through our sense doors only. Right? So according to this practice, you can only establish the world within the senses. You can't really establish an outside world without the senses. Right? So if we take that approach, the world wants to be deceived. So let it be deceived. In a way, our world is full of deception. That's what we need. That is the foundation of our survival or our function. We function based on this foundation. Our foundation is deception. This world, in order for it to continue, the world wants to be deceived. So let it be deceived, it says. That's how the samsara will continue. That's how it will continue till eternity. Right? So you have to understand, in a way, it's the ignorance that acts like the fabric of existence. There's ignorance as a foundation of existence. There is ignorance as the background of existence. And that's where we thrive. That's how we function. Now let me give an example. Actually, this is from one of the children's sessions. And there we were discussing one of the popular memes on internet. And that read, very demure, very mindful. Right? Obviously, it feels like it is related to our practice, the mindfulness practice. But actually, these memes, they have sarcasm behind them. Right? So if, let's say, you can do it like this. If somebody's work desk is a complete mess, then someone else might come and put a label that says very demure, very mindful. Right? So the very idea is used in a sarcastic manner. This person is a mess, and the label says very demure, very mindful. Right? So that is the meaning of the meme that's on internet. So we did this activity with children. We took, we made a sandwich, and the whole activity was to make a sandwich and eat it. Right? First round, they had it mindfully, the true meaning, the literal meaning, very demure, very mindful. So they had to apply butter slowly, mindfully, silently, make the sandwich, and even the eating little by little in a mindful manner with SMS, slowly, mindfully, silently, they tried to consume it. Right? So that was the round one. Then round two was the figurative meaning or the real meaning of the meme. Right? So that one we said, okay, now this one you do in your own comfort. Right? Maybe when nobody is watching, how you function at your home. Right? Imagine when nobody is there, when nobody is watching, do you do things with SMS, solely, mindfully, silently? Probably not. Instead, you just do it in your own way, and you are not mindful, not demure, right? That's how you function. So we asked them, imagine that you are home alone, nobody is watching, and you simply do it in your own way. And they were like, doing the buttering in their own comfort, and even the eating with licking fingers and, trying to stuck the whole sandwich in their mouth. So that way they did. So 2 rounds. First one is the literal meaning. Second one is the figurative meaning. So that way they did the 2 rounds. Then we asked an important question. Which one did you like? Which one was more enjoyable for you? Then, to my surprise, many of the kids, they said the second one would be more appealing to them. That means the figurative meaning, not demure, not mindful, right? So full of ignorance, and that's how they prefer it. And many of them, they said, the second one was more enjoyable. So you are not really forcing it, you are simply doing it in your own comfort. And that's the fabric of ignorance. That's how we function most of the time. It doesn't matter how much we talk about mindfulness. Maybe you stay mindful during the session, but in our usual lives, when we go into our daily life, that's how we function. Our foundation or our fabric is ignorance. And in that fabric, we function. And in our own comfort, we function. Right? And it feels home. It doesn't feel forceful. It doesn't feel difficult. It feels home. Right? Let's say when you start meditating for the very first time, you experience the difference. You have been doing things in your own way. You got introduced to mindfulness. And now it becomes a whole lot of difficulty with the practice. Especially if you come to a residential retreat, you figure out, this very effort is really tiresome, feels a lot of friction, because you are in the comfort of ignorance. That's your foundation. And when you start mindfulness, if you become residential for a few days, you come to experience a lot of friction due to that. Right? So you have to understand we function in the fabric of ignorance. Ignorance is the foundation of our existence. And that's how we function. Going against it, you feel a lot of friction. Being mindful, you feel a lot of friction. Going to a retreat, you feel a lot of friction. Because you feel home in your own ignorance. Right? That's how we deal with our life most of the time. And sometimes, even in our daily encounters, we become really stubborn. We don't even care about experts' opinions. We feel like we know it. Let's say you go to a doctor, the doctor do some test, and finally he come to the conclusion saying that you are diabetic. And this person, being in your own ignorance, being stubborn, might say, no, I don't have it. No, I don't have it. I'm sure the tests are wrong. I'm sure you have made a mistake. Because a person like me, I can't get a disease like this. Right? And in my life, I have hands-on experience with someone who simply refused doctor's opinion and said, I don't have diabetes. And he refused and he left. Right? So that's how we work. Even one of recent videos, it was on like space exploration, and they were giving some information about astronomers, right? And in the comment section, somebody wrote as the very first person saying, now you can see how many astronomers are there in the comment section. Because many people, they come and give their own opinion about traveling to outer space. Right? Probably they haven't been into a airplane, but still they come and give opinions. So the comment section goes saying, okay, now you can see how many astronomers are there in the comment section. Because everyone comes and give their own unique opinion. Right? So this is how we function. In a way, it's funny to hear this, but that's the foundation. That's the fabric of our existence. That way only we deal with things. Right? And I came across this quote. I think it is Sigmund Freud who says this. And he says you can live, or either man can live without sleep, but he can't live without dream. Some kind of an idea like that. He can survive without sleep, but he can't survive without dream. Right? Dreaming is the way for survival. We are in an illusion. We are in a dream. And that's how we can survive. And it says about a patient of his, a patient who believed he was dealing with a lot of sick people, mentally sick, ill. So this patient, this particular patient, he believed that he is dead. That was his belief, So the Sigmund Freud goes on to treat him. He says every day, for so many times, for 300 times, you have to recite to yourself. What is the recitation? What is the mantra? Dead men don't bleed. Dead men don't bleed. That was the mantra. So every day for like 300 times, this patient, he has to recite this. Dead men don't bleed. Right? So after doing this for maybe for 1 month or so. So you can see it's a mantra. It's an affirmation to himself. Dead men don't bleed. Right? So he has done this for a month or so. And at the end of the period, Sigmund Freud simply cut the patient's finger. And obviously the blood came out. Then the patient goes on to say, okay, the dead men bleed. Now he is not convinced that he is alive, but instead he says, the dead men bleed. Right? So nothing harmed, not even touched his delusion. He has that delusion as the foundation. And within that foundation, he says, okay, dead men bleed. Dead men do bleed. That's how the world works. Right? You have this foundation, you have this delusion, and nothing can challenge it. Right? So that's the way of the world. That's the way how we function. So you have to understand everything happens on this fabric of illusion or fabric of ignorance. Ignorance is the foundation of our existence. And it's interesting to see certain discourses that teach about this. And a particularly interesting one comes to my mind, and it talks about the process that runs on this fabric of ignorance. Now, when we usually think about our way of perceiving the world, we talk about materiality and mentality, right? Simply you can say form and name. According to the Buddhist approach, the form, it consists of 4 elements: earth element, fire element, water element, air element. That's the form. It consists of 4 elements. Then the name, the mentality, it consists of 5 different things. First one is feeling, perception, intention, contact, then attention. Yes, those 5, right? So the name, it consists of 5 things. Then the form, it consists of 4 things. So they say name and form. And based on those things only, we can experience the world. Let's say you are touching something. You grab something with your hand. There should be a physical object which you are grabbing. So that physical object consists of these 4 elements. The form. If you grab a metal or something, you might feel the surface is cold. The texture is smooth. All those feelings come, right? So it is based on the form part, 4 elements, but you can't experience the form without the mentality, the name, without feeling, without perception, without intention, without contact, without attention, you can't observe the form, right? So you can see name and form, they are both interconnected. Without name, you can't really observe or know that there is form. Without form, all these things won't be triggered. Right? So these 2 are interconnected, name and form. So if you get that idea, then we can move on to explain this particular teaching about Vipassī Buddha. And it goes on to say that Vipassī Buddha was asking or reflecting himself about the way of existence. He was asking, when what exists, is their name and form? When what exists, is their name and form? That was the question, right? And simply he comes to the conclusion, when consciousness exists, there is name and form. Consciousness is the reason for name and form. That was his conclusion. Then again he goes on to ask, when what exists, is there consciousness? When what exists, is there consciousness? Then again the answer comes as, when name and form exist, there is consciousness. Right? So if you try to figure out the reasoning for consciousness, it shows as name and form. If you try to figure out reasoning for name and form, then you end up with consciousness. Right? So he goes in few rounds, and finally, Vipassy Buddha, he comes to the conclusion that this bounces back. You can't go beyond this. Instead, this loop bounce back. Whenever you ask what is the reason for name and form, the reason is consciousness. Whenever you ask what is the reason for consciousness, the reason is name and form. Right? It's like two people pointing fingers at each other. When you ask from one person, he goes on to point to the other, saying it's not me, it's him. Then when you ask from that person, he goes on to point to the other and say, no, it's not me, it's him. Right? So that way they are pointing fingers at each other. That's how it works. That's how it functions. So the Vipassy Buddha comes to the conclusion saying that this bounces back. Whenever you go on to observe what is the reason when what exists is the name and form exist. When consciousness exists, the name and form will be there. When what exists, the consciousness exists. Then when name and form is there, the consciousness will be there. Right? So always it points to the other one. That's how this works. Right? So we can relate our activity to this idea, and simply whenever you try to observe who you are, or whenever you try to observe the observer, what happened, simply you are led towards observation. Some of you are directed towards the breath, some of you are directed towards the sounds, and that's how you feel it. Right? And sometimes inner chatter comes. Sometimes thoughts, various ideas come. Right? So whenever you are trying to figure out who is the observer, you are directed towards the observation. Let me clarify something here. The idea of name, it includes all those thought processes. Right? Feeling, perception, intention, contact, then attention. Your inner chatter, your thoughts, you feeling, perception, all those things are in a single package, and that is called name. Right? So whatever the feedback that you had to give, it was based on the name and form. The sounds, the bodily sensations, the thought processes, inner chatter, all of them, they go under the category of name and form. Right? And whenever you try to observe the consciousness, whenever you try to catch it, you are directed towards the name and form. And whenever you try to catch the name and form, you are directed towards the consciousness. So it's like a never-ending loop. You try to catch someone, and that one will point to the other, saying, no, it's not me, it's him. Then you go catch the other, that one will also say, no, it's not me, it's him. Right? So that way, this process bounces back. You never will reach to a conclusion. Instead, it will create more and more confusion. That's how it works. That's how this whole process goes. right? So it's an interesting thing to see. It's an interesting aspect of our practice. When we do our observation, we are always observing. Sometimes it's name and form. Sometimes it is consciousness. When you try to grab hold of consciousness, you are naturally directed towards the name and form. When you try to grab hold of name and form, you are naturally directed towards the consciousness. That's why even today, doing few minutes of practice, some of you said when you try to observe a sound, that sound disappeared. And quickly your attention was directed somewhere else, right? So experiencing a sound is like experiencing the name and form. But quickly your attention directed towards somewhere else. So this loop is happening non-stop. And whatever we are experiencing this loop only. You try to grab hold of name and form, you are directed towards the consciousness. You try to grab hold of consciousness, you are directed towards name and form. That's how this works. And you can see a lot of philosophical idea based on this one. One would be Douglas Harding. I think that's his name. He says, like outrageous kind of a statement, it says, you have no head. Right? You have no head. That's the statement. And you can even find a book on that topic. Douglas Harding, you have no head. And the whole idea is you can't really know the 0 point of this observer, the 0 point of your head, the 0 point of your observer. That's the argument. Now you go in front of a mirror and you will say, okay, I have a head, look. But that head appears only like few feet ahead of you. Then you might touch your head and say, okay, see, this is my head, I am touching it. But those sensations appear not in the center. Instead, it's few centimeters away from the center. And you can't really touch your head. You are simply creating this illusion in your mind. Okay, I'm touching your head, touching my head. But actually, what do you feel? You feel some sensations. That's all you feel, right? So their whole argument is saying simply, you can't know what is there in this 0 point. You can't know what is there in the center, right? You are always directed towards outside, right? You are directed towards a mirror. You are directed towards certain sensations. You are directed towards certain thought. That's how it works. Even today's observation, it was difficult. We come up with a lot of questions, utter confusion. That's because simply it bounces back. You can't really know what is there in the 0 point. And another philosophical idea would be this Alan Watts. And he has this insightful quote on this concept. And it goes to say, there was a young man who said, it seems that I know that I know. It seems that I know that I know. But what I would like to see is the I that knows me when I know that I know that I know. Right? Even I am reading this quote looking at a picture. Otherwise, I won't be able to remember this one. It seems that I know that I know. But what I would like to see is the I that knows me when I know that I know that I know, right? Confusing kind of words, but simply directed towards the I that knows this. Who is the knower, not the knowing, right? When you turn your attention towards the knower, you end up with confusion. When you turn your attention towards the knower, you end up with lot of doubts, questions, right? And we feel much at ease observing the observation. That's more comfortable, that's more pleasing to our practice, right? And when you try to go to the source, it is not easy. It bounces back and it creates a lot of confusion and doubts, right? Right. So that's the whole idea. We survive on the foundation of ignorance. We survive on the fabric of ignorance. And when that ignorance is threatened, many doubts are created. Confusion is created. Right? So even our mindful practice, we take a gradual approach. We observe our breath. So breath obviously is name and form. I hope you understand it. There is a physical flow of air at your nostrils. So that contained elements, 4 elements, the form, and of course, how to feel the breath. Feeling, perception, intention, contact, attention, all those things should be there. Right? So as breath, you are observing the name and form. That's how we start. But when you become successful observing the breath, what will happen is simply the breath disappears. As long as you are not successful observing the breath will be there. Right? That's the trick, Many people, they struggle to observe the breath. As long as they struggle, the breath will be there. Whenever they become successful observing the breath, the next moment you can see breath simply disappears. And when the breath disappears, you are simply directed towards consciousness. That's how many people, they feel at the edge. When the breath disappears, they feel like falling. They feel like falling to a pit, a never-ending kind of a pit. They feel like falling. And if you really pay attention to your breath, even at the end of the in-breath, at the end of the out-breath, you can feel this falling kind of a sensation. In a way, you are directed towards the consciousness, and that takes you towards a bottomless pit. Once again, with another object, probably a sound, probably a thought, you recover. You recover. But if you keep observing that sound even, at the end of that sound, once again, you are fallen into a bottomless pit. Right? That's what we do with the singing bowl. We make a sound of that singing bowl. And if you know the real singing bowls, I have one here, but it's not a real singing bowl. This one, it's not proper. But if you find a proper singing bowl, you can see once the sound is made, it continues for maybe 3 minutes, gradually fading away. Right? So we take such a singing bowl and we make a sound and ask the audience to simply follow that sound. And most of the time, initial part, they are successful. They can do it easily. But when the sound fades away, at a certain point, various other sounds come and take its place. Other sounds come and replace this sound. But if you are skillful, some children can do it. they can simply or keep observing the sound that is fading away. The sound is very faint, but still they can keep their attention with it. And towards the end, if they keep observing it, sometimes they say, I felt like falling into a bottomless pit. This falling kind of a sensation, this falling kind of experience comes. And suddenly they are recovered with another sound. Suddenly they are recovered with another thought. Right? So that way they recover. But you are recovering only with name and form. Once again, if you observe that recovered object, once again you will be fallen into a bottomless pit. Right? So that's the process that is happening. Usually what happens is that we don't even see this. We simply jump from one object to the other. One way of name and form to another way of name and form. That's how we continue. But if you take a single object and if you observe till the end of it, then you will have this experience. You can simply feel how at the end you feel like you are falling somewhere. You are falling into a bottomless pit. That shows the consciousness, right? You are at the edge and you seems to be experiencing the consciousness. You feel like falling into a bottomless pit. But suddenly, once again, the name and form, it comes to your rescue. The name and form will recover you from this experience, simply grabbing onto a different object. Simply grabbing onto a different sound. Simply grabbing onto a different thought. Right? So that's how it works. That's why Vipassana Buddha says, when what exists, the name and form exist. When the consciousness exists, the name and form exist. When what exists, the consciousness exists. When the name and form exist, the consciousness exists. This is the loop that goes on. Then Vipassana Buddha comes to a conclusion saying, this bounces back. You can't go beyond it. This bounces back. Right? So that's how this whole thing works. And this is our very foundation. The foundation of ignorance. Our world is full of deception. That's how we survive. So in order the world to be there, the deception or the ignorance should be there. That's why today's topic, it says, the world wants to be deceived, so let it be deceived. Thank you for your attention. Vanaya, I hope I answered all the doubts.
Thank you, Bhante. I feel like you tried to explain how we all live this beautiful life very well, but we, as you said, are still full of questions, and I'm glad we have another session, but I don't know if even that will be enough to explain this fully, unless you experience it yourself, like you said. So thank you so much for that. Let's now move on to the next stage, next item in the agenda, which is our reports that we have received, to present it to Bhante to get his feedback. And also if you have any questions at the end, if we have time to answer them as well. Before moving on to that, as Bhante said, the most important thing is to start somewhere with your meditation. If you haven't done so, start where to start. And I'm going to share my screen with some of the information Nissarana Vanaya has introduced us to. There are a couple of videos. I'm sure most of you are already doing meditation on a regular basis. So this is something that you can share with your friends if you are already meditating, and if not, this is somewhere you can start. Two videos, as I said, mindful walking and mindful sitting. Once you have watched them, you can set aside any amount of time, start practicing, and build it up to at least 2 hours of the day. And then once you have your own experience, we would like to hear from you, and write your experiences in a reflection report. Write your own experiences, as you could see probably in one of our next reports that we've received. You can write about your walking meditation and sitting meditation. And then if you have any other experiences during the day, you could share that as well. And this would be your own experience about your walking, what you felt, the sensations at your feet, and then if it's sitting, it would be what your object was, or whether you felt any changes that. Obviously, if you could experience what we discussed about it, even that, if not anything that you experience in your meditation. So once you have written the report, send it to us. There is a Google form which you also have in the poster that you would have received, or the Google form link is here, which I will put all the details on the chat in a moment. And also there is an email, which is the more popular way of sending reports to us by everyone, which is thebeginnersnb@gmail.com. Easier to remember. Of course, the recordings will also be on the website, but this is currently being live streamed on YouTube live stream as well. So that being said, I will now move on to the reports. There are 2 reports received today. First report by an adult. Teruan Saranai Bante. Last week, I reported the situation with a marital breakup and being alone. This is to share how things are going. Initially, it's like silent and no urge to express anything. Sometimes it gets closer to fading stuff, and soon or later makes distance from those fading stuffs. Mostly it is not expressible when hidden things come to surface. Sometimes an urge comes to share via a report. There it notices how some attachments are still hidden. That time it looks so real and gets closer to fading stuff and goes with them. Time to time, breakup related stuff fades away, and it is noticed that if those are identified, it is somewhat tiring. Sometimes those are from far and no caring. No difference between the experience of Sakmana, Pariyanka or day-to-day activities. Not able to see a clear boundary between each of them. Lifestyle is arranged, giving priority to the practice as much as possible. The Chief Bhante advised increasing the sitting hours, but no urge to forcefully do something as it feels tiring. There is trust, as it shows it knows how to handle, as it has found the balance of all. While watching a video related to attachment, something faded, clearing the meaning of love. At once it looked at the experience of related to it and faded as the love also bunch of thoughts which faded away. And the interesting part is to know that no one loves others, but one nourishes the fading of stuff as he or she loves me. Finally, one has loved those fading stuff, not to the outer one. The same fading stuff goes opposite when one goes through breakup. Bhante, thank you so much for the guidance. Thanks for the program organizers and giving space to share. That is the end of report, Bhante.
Yes, so this is how we survive. We usually want someone else's comfort in order to survive. But in reality, if you really think about it, it is not the other person's needs that we are focused on. Instead, we are simply satisfying our needs with their company. And if both parties agree to it, then you are satisfying your needs with the other person is satisfying their needs with you. Right? In a way, we fulfill each other's karma. That's how it is. Right? Whoever you find in your life, in a way, they have a duty to fulfill a part of your karma. And they come in different forms. They come as children, they come as spouses, they come as in-laws, they come as friends. So all these people, they come in a way, they have a duty to fulfill a certain part of your karma. Right? So that's how the life works. So it's not about other person's needs. It's not about other person's satisfaction. We are satisfying ourselves. In a way, a mother would feed their children. It feels like she's doing it for someone else. But in reality, most of the mothers, they feel satisfied simply by feeding their children, simply by treating them well. That gives meaning to their life, right? That's how the meaning comes. Some people, their meaning is with work or their business. When that gives meaning, they are satisfied, right? So in a way, all of us, we are on a quest to satisfy our own needs. There's this vacuum, there's this empty space we have to fill. So we are in a quest to fulfill it. Some people, they fulfill it with their children. Some people, they fulfill it with their spouses. Some people, they fulfill it with their work or business. So it's all about fulfilling this vacuum, right? But this practice, if you somehow stumble upon it, simply this practice, it's all about simply giving in or surrendering to this vacuum. And when you give in, it's not easy. That's the whole struggle that all of us are going through. Some would prefer not giving in. Some would prefer simply satisfying this or satisfying or fulfilling this vacuum. But some, they are to take it on. Simply giving in. Simply surrendering to this vacuum. And if you can fully surrender, you are simply enlightened. But it's not easy. So this whole process comes. The process is identified as path. This whole path comes simply preparing yourself to surrender little by little. Right? So whatever happened in your life, it created the causes for this surrender. It's not a pleasant experience. Pleasant experience usually drive us more towards ignorance. But painful experiences, they drive us towards wisdom. Right? So whatever the things happened, they happened for a reason. And those very experiences drove you towards this very practice. Simply surrendering. Simply giving in to this vacuum that's within us. And since we can't give in quickly, since we can't give in overnight, the whole practice comes into play. Right? So the whole path comes into play. Simply we are training ourselves to giving. We are training ourselves to surrender. So that's the process that you're experiencing. That's the process that you're explaining. And when you continue, when you spend more and more practice hours, naturally, you will be surrendering more and more. So do the sitting, do the walking, go to the daily life. There is no difference. That's important. Now your practice simply becomes living. Right? Whether it's the sitting, whether it's the walking, whether it's the daily life, simply living becomes your practice. Simply mindfulness becomes your practice. Right? Not only sitting mindfulness, not only walking mindfulness, even in daily life, simply being mindful. And when you continue like that, we'll be able to surrender to this vacuum within us. We'll be simply able to give in to this vacuum within us. That's the process that you are going through. And even in your own experience, in your own words, you are explaining that you are able to surrender. Whatever those memories, incidents, simply surrender to them. And when you surrender, they fade away. That's all that happens. All those thoughts, simply surrender to it. When you surrender, those thoughts fade away. As long as you are fighting, the memories, as long as you are fighting those thoughts, they will thrive. But as soon as you surrender, they simply disappear, fade away. Right? So that's the whole process. And if you can continue for many months, many years, then you can simply see you become fully surrendered. You give in fully, and that's how the peace will arise. Right? Many people in this world, they avoid this vacuum that's within them. They try to fulfill it with outside things, outside people. But as practitioners, we simply surrender to this vacuum. That's the whole path.
Thank you, Bhante. I hope that answered the question. So the next one is from an adult. It's a short report. Mindful walking, walked freely few times, stood at the edge and observed posture as a statue, walked observing feet as left and right, felt hardness of the floor. Mindful sitting. Sat and observed posture as a statue, observed belly movements and counted, could observe 5 motions in a length, and Thero and Saranai Utub Swamina answer. That's the end of report, Bhante.
Yes, so we will give you a take-home exercise. So you know your practice and you have done it for a long time. So a take-home exercise would be the I that knows this. Right? The I that knows this. Focus on that part and let us know how you observe the I that knows all this. You say you observe 5-6 breath cycles. You say you can march a few steps mindfully. So that's all the knowing. But who is observing? Who is the I that knows all this? Right? That will direct you towards the origin, the 0 point. And it's going to be bit of a puzzling exercise, but you can try it and let us know your progress.
Thank you, Bhante. So that brings us to the end of questions. And I'm pretty sure most of you are full of questions after today's topic, or full of confusion, one or the other. If you have any questions, please ask us. This is the good time to ask, but obviously we will be continuing with this topic next week, and we may still have questions at the end of that as well. So please, this is a good time for you to ask any questions from Bhante.
Obviously, too many questions. So
Or
I don't know.
utterly confused, one or the other.
I'm sure I won't be able to clarify those confusions or questions. So given the topic, that's sure. Even without asking, I can say I won't be able to clarify. But of course, we can take some time to discuss various angles to it.
Yes, Samantha, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Bhante. Yes, I must say I'm left with the confusion and a lot of observation. But at the end of the day, I think I know Bhante will just say, just be mindful in the present. But I was just wondering when Bhante said surrender to the vacuum, is that how is that being how well what exactly that it just if Bhante could expand on that, is that that space between the when you're observing the through the five senses or this and the mind, the thoughts, at the end of it, is that the when you observe you fall into that vacuum? Is that what Bhante means by surrender to the vacuum?
We can simply explain it like this: simply give up the urge to do things. Usually we have this urge to do things. You know, we can't stay still with our body. We have this compulsive urge to move the body. Then we have this urge to talk. Silence feels like awkward. So this urge is there to non-stop talking. Then even out of those two, in our mind, there is this non-stop urge to do things, think things, give ideas, opinions, right? So there is always this urge to do things, urge to act, right? In order for you to experience that vacuum, simply give up the urge to act. In a way, we can say doing nothing. But if you try this, then you figure out how difficult it's to do nothing. Even doing nothing becomes another task for you to do, right? So that difficult, because we are always driven by this urge, and that urge drives us to do many things and fulfill ourselves. What are we fulfilling? We are fulfilling this vacuum, right? We are fulfilling this space. And if you can simply give up the urge to do things, then you surrender to the vacuum. But it's not easy. Even as meditation, many people, they do things. In a way, for beginners, of course, we introduce meditation as doing something. But if you know real meditation, simply not doing would be the best meditation. It's really hard.
Mm.
And surrendering, I meant simply giving up. Simply surrendering. And if you can do that, that would be the best meditation.
Mm. Thank you, Bhante. I need to master the second truth then, craving. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you, Samantha. Anyone else? We may have a couple of minutes to ask one more question, maybe.
Avasara Bhante, just a little question about name and form. So we most of the time when we do practice, so this is the process happening in the mind, as you explained, Bhante, that it comes name and form. Actually, it comes like a form, and then mind identifies it as a name. So that's where it makes the consciousness progress. And once you start looking the observer, the consciousness, so you lose the grip, and as you explained one day, you fall to the without knowing, you fall to the bottom of the lid, or bottom of the pit. So is it something it's explained? I heard of some talks as well where we see the canvas instead of the pictures there, but actually we won't see the canvas. So that is somewhat we can relate to it. Thank you.
Yes, in your statement you said that the form comes first and the mind gives name to it. That's also the mind that talks, right? Without name, can we ever identify form? Not possible, right? Only with the name, with mentality only, we can experience the materiality. Our rational mind will say, okay, the form comes first, then it gives a name, and then only we see it, right? But in reality, these two are interconnected. You can't really separate them. Even when we observe the breath, it's a combination of these two that we are observing, right? So that I wanted to, in a way, make a point, make a comment on that, your statement. And in a way, we can say, instead of the painting, see the fabric. Instead of the movie, see the screen, right? That way we can identify this whole practice. That way we can explain this. But whenever we try to look at the screen, the movie grabs our attention. And in many people, they would simply prefer enjoying the movie in the darkness, the darkness of ignorance. Even in a theater, you can simply see this, you need darkness in order to enjoy the movie. If the light comes, then the picture becomes faded. The clarity reduces, right? So the light of mindfulness, we simply be mindful. And even today's reports, someone was saying these things are fading away. When you be mindful, the movie fades away. But can you really see the screen? That's a different matter. Usually it is not giving up that easily, right? This whole process of ignorance, it doesn't give up so easily. It will continue one way or the other, right? So that's why we have been practicing for many years, and as long as we live, we simply continue with the practice. Even this program, I presume, probably like 5 years we have conducted this. And some of you have been here for many years. And by simply being here, by simply discussing, by simply continuing your practice, you have improved a lot, right? So that's the whole approach. It's not giving up that easily, the whole process of ignorance. will find ways to somehow continue. So we have to keep at it. That's the whole idea.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Vandala, and thank you, Bhante. So that does bring us to the end of today, although there are some questions, some have posted and some probably still have questions and don't know how to word it. I would say maybe practice more for this next week and bring in your questions for next week maybe. And we will continue to explore this topic next week again. That does bring us to the end of the session, unfortunately. Thank you for everyone who shared reports and asked questions. This helps all of us. So we now move on to ending the session. On behalf of the organizers, I'd like to thank you, Bhante DhammaKusala Thero. He continuously is guiding us and encouraging us to continue with this program. And we can't forget the chief abbot of Nissarana Vanaya, Venerable Udayirigama Dhammajiva Mahathero, whose idea was to initiate this program as well. May they both improve their own practice with these merits as well. Thank you to all the organizers who are working really hard to bring this program to you. And on that note, I would like everyone to see if you are able to help organize in any way, even if it's not on a regular basis. Please do get in touch with us. And we are always looking for more help for people to read reports or to do posters or to just generally organize things, or especially to host as well. So if anyone is able to help in any way, even if it's an on and off, odd, irregular manner, that's fine. Please get in touch with us for that as well. So as I was saying, thank you to all the organizers and for bringing this program to us every week. And we'd like to hear from you, and we welcome you for that. So as usual, we will be meeting every week for our program, 1 p.m. Sri Lankan time. And this is the end of the session. I wish all of you a happy and mindful week ahead of you. I will now end the session.